Good afternoon. It's Men's Health Month, and Prestige Healthcare Resources, in partnership with Amerigroup, MMT Bank, Bread for the City, and the DC Department of Behavioral Health, presents Enhancing Community Resilience. It is a continuing conversation. My name is Seth Washington, and I am privileged to be your moderator for today. Resiliency is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. Today's conversation seeks to add real strength to the nature of our community's resiliency. The voices assembled here today represent elite thought leaders in healthcare, elected leadership, policymakers, as well as crisis response, spiritual and motivational thought processes. They are also sons, brothers, fathers, husbands, and most importantly, they are members of our community. As such, we welcome them and we welcome you. One of our first voices that we will hear today will be that of Carl Racine. Carl Racine was sworn in as the District of Columbia's first elected Attorney General in 2015 and was re-elected to a second term in 2018. Born in Haiti, Attorney General Carl Racine came to the District of Columbia at the age of 3. He attended DC public schools, including Murch Elementary, Deal Junior High, and Wilson High School, and graduated from St. John's College High School. He earned a BA from the University of Pennsylvania, where he was captain of the basketball team, and earned a JD from the University of Virginia Law School. His commitment to equal justice was inspired by his parents, who fled authoritarian rule in Haiti to start a better life in the United States. And he was inspired by the lawyers of the civil rights movement who used the law to make positive social change. Attorney General Racine is honored to serve, and he is committed to making investments in new efforts to protect seniors and other vulnerable residents, interrupt violence in the district, and address childhood trauma and more. Our first speaker for today is the District of Columbia's Attorney General, Carl A. Racine.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for organizing this event. For the last 10 years, you've been an indispensable asset to the district, and your services, particularly for residents in our most vulnerable neighborhoods, are simply invaluable. You've provided a helping hand to people with chronic health conditions, and you've showed them the path to better living through coping and management strategies. Not even a pandemic could stop you from serving your clients. I'm heartened to know that you've shifted to offering telehealth options. To ensure your clients can take advantage of those services, you're also providing smartphones to those who need it. In a moment when so many are struggling to put food on the table, you're coordinating with food banks to deliver meals so these families and individuals
Having a little difficulty right now with
hundreds of neighbors, and we're praying for so many more. And the essential people on the front line, our friends, our family, our community members, are putting themselves at risk of exposure every day to keep the world going. Of course, we all recognize that the impacts of COVID-19 are more profound among the clients Prestige Community Resources serves. Residents in wards 5, 7, and 8 are much more likely to be working essential jobs, that put them at greater risk of catching the virus and limit their flexibility to isolate. They're less likely to have health insurance, so if they get sick, they may be forced to make an impossible choice between getting care or going bankrupt. These residents are also more likely to have existing health issues, in no small part because there's a dearth of grocery stores to make it possible to eat well, and of healthcare providers to make it easier to live well. We know these inequities aren't new. This pandemic did not create them, but it should finally shake us into action. Because the consequences, in the overwhelming disparity in mortality rates by ward, and importantly by race, are totally unacceptable. Of the roughly 550 residents we've lost in the District of Columbia, more than half lived in wards 5, 7, and 8, and around 75% of them were African American. This is a moment of high stress and high anxiety. We've all felt it, and we all know that strains our mental health. And I know that amongst men, there's a belief that being stoic is a sign of strength. The truth is, that's not a sign of strength. The best sign of strength is to be honest about the help that you need and go about getting that help. We do not need to suffer in silence anymore. For me, I make it a point to take time for myself to go on walks or exercise, or to talk frequently with my friends and family, to understand how they're feeling and share with them the ups and downs that I might have. I also reach out frequently to religious and spiritual leaders who help me put things in context when I'm not feeling so well. And I can't overstate how much all of that helps. And it all starts with our being courageous enough to reach out for help. That's why we need to normalize talking about and caring about our own mental health. We need to familiarize our residents with tools and strategies for building resilience, centering gratitude, and staying balanced. And we need people to understand that anyone can learn how to hold tight to hope in moments of despair and find sources of joy to counterbalance the grief that we're all going through. It's how we persevere, and it's why we will prosper in the end. I want you to know that through all of this, you have a friend in the Office of Attorney General. We're using the law to solve problems, especially for our most vulnerable residents. We're listening and responding to complaints and doing what we can to meet the needs of our residents. That means standing up to slumlords, to scammers and to fraudsters, to businesses that cheat their customers and exploit their employees. And it means we won't back down, not even from a corrupt federal administration. But I know we can do more. I look forward to the ideas that these discussions will yield and to working together to improve the lives of district residents. I encourage you to visit us online at oag.dc.gov/coronavirus to learn about OAG's work amid this public health emergency and to access the helpful resources we have on our webpage. Thanks to Will and the Prestige Community Resources team once again for inviting me to speak, and most importantly, thank you for your extraordinary community to our most important citizens, our residents in need. And thank you for all you do to make sure that our communities have a chance to be safe, healthy, and thrive.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Carl, for those words. And we know that as Attorney General is saying, the Office of the Attorney General is assisting the District of Columbia regarding consumers and tenant affairs, workers, businesses, senior children, and vulnerable residents. We are continuing to enhance
community resilience in today's conversation. Our next speaker is a bridge builder of policy and of employment, as well as professional quality of life as it relates to persons and professionals with disabilities. Patrick Coley is a graduate of Howard University and is a resident of the District of Columbia. And we welcome him here today to speak about how we can enhance our resilience. Please welcome Patrick Coley.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Seth, for that introduction. And thank you to Will and the Prestige team for having me on board with you guys today. I'm very pleased to be able to have this conversation and to speak to a lot of men who I've hopefully gotten to know during my residency here in the District of Columbia. I'm in my 25th year of being a local in the district, which means I've lived here longer than in my native South Carolina. So I'm so pleased to call it home. And be a part of this important culture and conversation. Just to get us started, I think I'd like to underscore some of the words that the Attorney General said. AG Racine very much said how it is important as men that we take seriously our own mental health. And of all the points that I'm going to make today, if there is one that you take away, I think that may be the one that's the most important. We have to be very careful that we do not apply a gender model or even a moral model to our own mental health. Not only is that a dangerous road to walk, that stoicism that AG Racine was talking about really walks us away from doing the important things. And if we were to say that there were things that men do, a strong man would take care of his mental health. A resilient man would know that in the same way that you prepare physically, you also have to prepare mentally. In the same way you build the external, you build the internal. And so it's important that we remember that mental health care and self-care are not indulgences. They are not extras, but should be core parts of all of our positive mental health practices and things that we want to make as priorities in our lives. Now, the other thing that's interesting about mental health is that it's not something that we have to do alone. In fact, it's almost key that you have a network of supporters and a network of tools that you use in order to build positive mental health practices. In the same way where you wouldn't go lift without a spot, you should not be attempting to manage or work through positive mental health practices on your own. And one of the great things about Amerigroup DC are the resources that we have made available for a lot of our members in order to make it so that you don't have to work through this process by yourself. Our recently developed Sydney app is available that basically acts as your own personal health assistant. It's a tool that can work directly with individuals to make a focus on you and your healthcare needs, as well as connect you to questions and answers that you might have about prioritizing your care. And a lot of these tools and resources are available on our website at www.myamerigroup.com/DC. One of the things that people may not realize very much about, their sort of health options are there is a standing cadre of professionals that are there and waiting to answer your questions and work with you individually to find resources and tools that can support you. And our Sydney app is one of those things. We have resources on our website related to COVID-19, as well as tools that can just sort of walk you through any sort of information or mental health crisis that you might be in. Now, that being said, let's go back to making sure that we have a talk about your positive mental health practices and the tools that we have available. In addition to not placing a moral model on your mental health or on what's taking place, we also have to, there's some steps that we can all take to remain proactive and to remain in a positive mental health space. And the first is, like I said, making a priority of your own mental health. This is important, especially as some of us are still physical distancing or dealing with the ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the easiest things to do is make sure that you create and stick to a routine. It seems like a very small thing, but it's something that will be able to help keep your consciousness in the right place, keep positive, and make it so that your days don't blur into one. For those of us who've been working from home, this can be a key element. Monday should not feel like Saturday. Creating a routine is a good way to keep you balanced, to keep you rooted, and keep you in a good mental place mentally. It also makes it so that each day is important. And when you do take breaks, they're also sort of a clearly defined place for you. Remember that even though if you are at home, this regular schedule will keep you balanced. You should wake and rest at normal hours. You don't want to treat every day like it's Saturday. And if you take medications, make sure you take them regularly. Don't make every day a cheat day. In the same way that you want to create that balance through going to work, you are going to have to make that happen on your own through scheduling. Another piece that we also suggest is make sure that you're taking care with your internet and television time. We're living in a period right now where you can't turn on the television or look at your smartphone, frankly, without seeing something that is upsetting. Part of positive mental health practices are not putting yourself in a bubble and denying what's going on about you, but the positive practice is saying, I understand that these things may not be good for my personal mental health. Therefore, I will control how much of them come in and out of my normal system. I will not sit and binge watch, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News all day. I will realize that if it makes me upset, I will take small doses. I will limit my time. I will think critically about the places where my news and information and engagement comes from. If you're living in close quarters with people, and I'll give you guys a great example. I am lucky to live in the district, like I said, in Lincoln Park. I am the proud father of 3 lovely children, and my wife is here with me. And as much as I love them, there are times where after being in the same house with them for 3 months, I'm sure I'm grating on their nerves as well. Do not sit and suffer through this and pretend like it's not an issue. Do not sit and be stoic and allow yourself damage to your mental health and your capacity. Set boundaries. Make sure that everyone has a chance for alone time. Make sure that if you need a particular amount of space to reset, that you are allowing that for yourself. And if you are the shared head of your household, I don't think my wife would like me to say I'm the head of my household alone. I think that there's always an opportunity there to make sure that everyone is having the opportunity to make positive mental health choices, showing everyone that creating that space, creating that gracious space for yourselves and for each other is something that's important, and making sure that they replicate it in everything that they do. Again, in the same way that you would put a focus on your physical health, you should be focusing on your mental health. Now, if you happen to live alone, also consider how you will be using, you can use digital resources for engagement. I think when the COVID-19 pandemic first got off the ground, many of us were, let's say, skeptical about the use of large-scale Zoom interactions. I'm sure we thought that, it would be possible and that it would work, but it was one thing to do it for work and another thing to do it socially. Now, 3 months in, I've met with my book club several times. I have close friends that we regularly get together and meet for happy hours or engagement. And even though it's a little bit odd, I can feel the boost that has come from that social interaction. So make sure that you're using those tools. Use your Facebook Messenger, use your Zoom, use your WebEx, or any of these platforms, and meet regularly with people, even if it's just to check in. It is a huge thing to make sure that you are not feeling isolated and alone. And it's very important. Even inside of Amerigroup, we actually meet regularly with our colleagues and coworkers just for some water cooler chats, just to touch base with each other. It allows us to remain connected and remain engaged. And it's been very important, I feel, for our own sort of productivity. And then, a last couple of points. remember that as serious as all of this is, laughter is important. Frivolity and leisure is equally important. Make sure that you are giving yourself grace and giving yourself time to laugh as well. I think many times, you know, like A.G. Racine said, we get into the stoicism and thinking about what is manly, and you know, whether or not, you know, that means we can show the weakness that we might perceive of dealing with our own personal mental health. If no one's ever told you that that's not a good way to go, or that that's not the positive case, I'm here to tell you that we don't have to do that. Make these things important, make them you know, something that you take a productive hand in. And then my last 2 points, or my last point, is just to remember that if you are in a mental health crisis, there are resources and tools out there available. There are people out there available to help you. If you feel like you're in a mental health crisis right now and you are listening to my words, you know, remember that you can always call 911 or reach out to helplines like the National Alliance on Mental Illness Healthline at 800-950-6264. And if you are feeling as if you are unsure, or that you don't know where your next steps are, remember that there are always resources, there are tools that can help. You are not alone, and there is something that can be done. There are solutions, and there are folks who are waiting. So with that, I'm going to pass it back. Again, thank you to Prestige for allowing us to speak, and I look forward to our continued conversation about positive mental health.
And that is Patrick. Hopefully, we thank you very much for those insights, wisdom, as well as
because of our audio problems that we're currently experiencing, I will do the introduction for the Honorable Council Member Trayon White. My name is Will Bonnet. I'm the president of Prestige Community Resources. Council Member Trayon White is a Washington, D.C. native and proudly honors graduate. Is a proud father, community advocate, and humanitarian. Councilmember White furthered his education at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration. He's founded many community programs and nonprofit organizations over the years. Bold Brothers for Christ, which Councilmember White founded as an undergraduate student, provided spiritual support to young men in college. Helping Inner City Kids is another organization founded by Mr. White in 2007 that provides youth engagement and prevention activities for youth in Ward 8. Manpower DC, first created in 2015, serves as an organization that provides leadership and training to young men in Ward 8. Certainly, all of his work has set him up to be in a great position to help the young men and other residents that live and is part of our community in Ward 7 and 8. Ward 8 is blessed to have the Honorable Councilmember White as a leader. He just won re-election again in 2018, and we look forward to his guidance and leadership as we build and improve community resilience throughout the city. Without further ado, I give you Councilmember White.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for having me to the Prestige family. First, I want to thank John for introducing me to Prestige, and also Charles Moreland. And I just know that I want to thank you all for setting up an office east of the Anacostia River, most importantly, Ward 8, because our needs are very challenging in this community. And I'm glad we're starting the conversation talking about men. I'm a very spiritual man, but I believe that men should have vision. And there's also a saying, where there's no vision, the people perish. And it's hard for our men to have vision when they are facing some tremendous mental health challenges. And in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, we see all over the country, people had to alter their lifestyles in so many different ways. And those who were already suffering from mental health services, that intensive care has enhanced, not just among the adults or men or women, but also among the children. So I'm excited that today we are having a conversation with some mental health professionals to give us some advice about how we can navigate and grow and just practice some normalcy during this time. And I just want to thank you all for having me on, because I'm listening and learning. I started my mental health services some 8 months ago, and it's been life-changing for me, improving my relationship with my spouse, also my son, just my life in general, because I take on so many different issues from the community. And I meet people at their worst. You know, when I answer my phone, when I look at my DMs on Instagram, on my Facebook messages, I'm hearing from people that are struggling with some very troubling circumstances, and how to respond quickly. And it alters my day when I'm doing something normal with my family, answer the call, and someone is in crisis. So I'm learning how to use different tools to adapt. And I can also imagine what's happening with everyday individuals who may not have the tools that I have to navigate. And so I'm a strong proponent of mental health service. I'm happy with acknowledging the men on this call, and those who may be watching from all types of apps and platforms, to get mental health service and get engaged and get in tune with yourself to figure out ways to maximize your potential. So I see we have my friend Carl Racine on here giving some good wisdom, good words. And so I'll be tuned in, listening and learning today. Thank you all.
Greetings.
I'm sorry, we apparently experienced some audio visual difficulty. I want to thank Councilmember Trayon White for his wonderful words of guidance and encouragement. Our next speaker is Dr. Philip B. Terry Smith. Dr. Terry Smith is an assistant professor of sociology at Anne Arundel Community College. He maintains a private practice as an executive and personal coach, counselor, organizational consultant, and he's worked with many diverse populations and settings. He's noted for using creative approaches to help communities, organizations, and individuals meet and overcome challenges, and thus has made a career the study of social systems and human service management and consulting. He has taught at the graduate and undergraduate level for many years in the distance, non-traditional, and brick and mortar schools, including a 10-year stint with a local high school. Dr. Terry Smith spent several years with the American Red Cross as a volunteer and an unpaid staff as executive and later senior director of emergency and international services for the National Capital Region. He was responsible for the implementation of emergency services and initiatives for our National Capital Region. He served as a mental health officer in this region, and experiences with the American Red Cross included being a director for Hurricane Katrina and Rita evacuees displaced in the District of Columbia, event director for the World War II Memorial Dedication, and job director for the Presidential State Funerals. Other significant experience have included shift lead for mental health services, first responders care for the 9/11 occurrence in 2001, special response team at the Pentagon, and assistant officer for mental health, supervising mental health care for first responders and rescue workers at the World Trade Center, Ground Zero. That's a big, big ask. I will say that I've known Dr. Terry for many years. He's an excellent educator, and I think that we're very fortunate to be able to have him on board Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Philip Terry Smith so he can share his experience, strength, knowledge, wisdom for the Ward 8 and community, as well as the all the healthcare providers that are currently on. So without any further ado, I give you Dr. Philip Terry Smith.
Hey, thanks, Will, and good morning, I guess afternoon at this point to everyone that's on the call today. You know, we're living in strange times, and the first thing I want to do is to acknowledge that we all have to recognize that things aren't okay, right? And that's a big part of what we need to do today, is to just recognize that things aren't okay. Like, we're getting feedback in the sound system, we're getting feedback in our heads as well, right? And it's okay. It's okay to get that kind of feedback, and it's more important that we recognize that we are living in some very unique and frankly historic times. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that and say bravo to this team for pulling this meeting together and for giving us all an opportunity to pause for a moment and think about our own health and well-being. We can go ahead and progress to the next slide, please. Seth started us off by giving us a definition, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I am going to give you an analogy to think about, and that is that of a rubber band. And if you think about a rubber band can stretch, and it can mold, and it can shape, but if you push it too far, it'll break. So when we think about resiliency, I'd like us to think about that. I'd like us to think about the notion that we all have the ability to stretch and to be elastic and to mold to accommodate different things. And our resiliency is our ability to snap back into shape after all of that happens. Next slide, please. And we can go to the next one, please. So I want to take a deep dive into the definition that you heard a little bit earlier, and just pull out a couple of words that I've underlined here. So the first is capacity, recover quickly, adapting well from difficulties, toughness in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. And then I bolded and underlined there at the bottom the ability to spring back, because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about our ability to spring back in the face of all of those things that were listed up above. And, you know, COVID-19 put us all in a very unique position over the course of the last almost 4 months now. But then we had a whole bunch of other things that have a direct impact on our community and on African-American men, Black men in particular. And we can't lose sight of any of that, right? But our ability to spring back from that is what we're talking about today. Next slide. So face it, we've had plenty of adversity. We've had lots of stress. We've had lots of difficulties, tragedies, and threats. We're in some tough situations right now. So we've had all of these things that we know contribute to trauma and contribute to stress. And I want us again to pause and to think about that and reflect. So the question that we have is, what do we do about it? So if we can move to the next slide, please. We have to remember, first and foremost, that there are other factors that are impacting our community, and the Attorney General and the council member both alluded to many of those things, right? So all of that is also adding to this environment that we're, quite frankly, surviving in. Next slide, please. So to build resilience for ourselves and for our communities, we got to enhance our capacity to adapt, to recover quickly, and our ability to spring back into shape. Will mentioned earlier that I did some work during 9/11, and that was some of my most memorable and profound work. And I'll talk on that for just a moment, because the individuals that I was working with were ones you wouldn't typically think would have challenges with stress. I was working with first responders, law enforcement officers, firefighters, rescue workers, the FBI, the generals at the Pentagon. And these are all, you know, when you think of images about what a man is, right, these are the images that we get, if I want to go to the stereotype for a moment. But the ability to give space for those folks that were on the front lines of one of the most tragic occurrences in our country to kind of pause and just reflect on their own emotion was important. And I share that with you today, that you give yourself space to pause and reflect on and recognize and honor your emotion. Next slide, please. So here's what we do, right? The first thing we need to do is to recognize, and I love the title of this presentation, where's your head at? Where's your head at? and how do we make it happen? So I'm going to give you some steps that we can use to build our own resilience and to manage our own stress and trauma through this. And I'm going to repeat some things you've already heard. There's some common themes that have gone through everyone that's spoken so far this morning, right? Each and every one of us have said pretty much the same thing. So I'm hoping you're getting that message, that there are some very key things that you need to do to take care of yourself. The first thing is change the narrative. Change the narrative. We know things are, I'm going to be polite, I'm going to be a gentleman today, and I'm not going to use words I would typically use, but we know things are messed up. We know it, and we acknowledge that. So the question is, what do we do with that? And I would say change the narrative. Instead of looking at it as trauma or looking at it as being messed up, think about what can be learned from the experiences, and think about what the emotions are that are associated with that, and think about where we can go next with that. Think about how we can progress and grow through those things. Resiliency, again, is that ability to snap back. You don't snap back if you don't recognize that you've been stretched out, right? So recognize that and allow yourself to snap back. The next thing is to face your fears. Boy, that's a tough one, gentlemen. That's a tough one. We're not really good sometimes at facing our fears because we assume that it implies a weakness, and it really doesn't. You don't know how strong you are until you know how weak you are, right? And Patrick mentioned it earlier. It's like lifting weights without a spotter, right? If I don't know I got to have somebody watching my back, I'm in trouble, right? So I don't want to lift this burden by myself. I want to know that I have friends and colleagues and folks that'll spot me as I'm lifting this burden. The next is practice self-compassion. Be gentle with you. It starts with you. If we're gentle with ourselves, we'll be gentle with our kids and our spouses and our family and our coworkers and our community. Be gentle with you. Practice some self-compassion. Be mindful. Don't have judgment or jump to analysis. Notice what it is that you're feeling. If something's upsetting you, pause for a moment and recognize what that is, right? Remember that you're not alone. Remember that you're not alone. All of us are experiencing very, very similar things. And be kind to yourself. Again, Patrick mentioned it earlier, turn off that friggin' news and get off of Facebook for a hot minute and give yourself a moment to just be. We are inundated with information. We're inundated with text messages. I actually signed off of Facebook. I haven't been on it in about a week and a half now because it just became overwhelming with the amount of, and I call it toxicity, right? The amount of toxicity. And part of it is our reaction to the stress. And we're using Facebook as an outlet for that. But again, take care of yourself and check out of that. Cultivate forgiveness. Cultivate forgiveness for yourself and for others. Anyone that's in the recovery community knows that that's huge, right? That ability to forgive and to recognize when we've harmed ourselves or others and to move on from it. Next slide, please. Again, this is reiterating, get connected, build strong positive relationships. Think about connecting with your volunteer organization, with your faith community, your spiritual community, your support group, your support network. Get back in the room if you stepped out of the room. And I've seen wonderful meetings and fellowship that's been happening just like we're doing now, virtually and online. But it's important to maintain those connections, right? So make sure that you are building and reinforcing your community. And again, just like it would happen in a recovery process, someone may need to hear your message. And you build additional strength by helping someone else. So think about that as well. Make every day meaningful, but you have to recognize that there are different days. Patrick, I'm going to pull you out again, man, because you nailed it right on the head, right? That if it's Groundhog's Day and your Friday feels like Monday and your Monday feels like Sunday and your Sunday feels like Wednesday, you need to pause. Set boundaries for yourself. Set boundaries for your time. I'm real clear with my folks at the college. I'm available from 8:30 till 11, and then I'm off for lunch, and then I'm available from 1 until 3:30. Don't call me, don't email me, don't text me. I'm not responding. And if it's Friday, forget it. It's not happening, right? It's important to set those boundaries and to build routines. Now, the cool thing about all this remote work is that we can change our routines. If I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can get up and do 2 hours worth of work and then go on about my business, right? So we have some flexibility that we can build in there, but it's really important that you set those boundaries and that you have meaning in every day. Do something that gives you a sense of accomplishment and purpose. This is real important. Set yourself some goals and look forward to the future with meaning. What's coming down the road and how can you get yourself there? what a great time as we're all sitting at home to pick up a new hobby or to pick up, to learn something new. There's lots of free classes, graduate and college classes that are available online. I know you're online because you're listening to me, right? So look up some of those classes that are available that can teach you something different, that can take you in a different direction. And most of them are free, by the way, right? You don't always have to pay to get value from something. So take advantage of those things. Learn from your experiences. Think of how you coped with hardships in the past. And I actually recommend that you journal. You know, keep a journal, keep a log of what your experiences are, both good, bad, and indifferent. I'm going to go back to something I said early on. We are living through historic times. You know, my work in the Red Cross had me mindful of when we hit those 100-year flood cycles. Oh, it's the worst flood in 100 years. Folks, this is the worst pandemic in 100 years. You're living through a historic moment. Document it, journal it. Folks, this is the first time since the 60s that we've seen the type of turmoil and impetus around social change. You're living through it. Document it, journal it, right? So that you can then learn from those experiences and we can share those experiences with others. Again, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's important to journal. Anyone that's been through, again, a recovery process or any type of personal reflection or spiritual journey, you know, one of the things we do is we journal. And we keep track of and acknowledge how we transition through these different periods of our lives. This is a great time to be journaling and thinking about the impacts and what you're experiencing right now. And then the next thing I have here is to remain hopeful. Boy, this is a big one. You can't change the past, but you can always look towards the future, one day at a time, right? We can't change the past, but we can look forward to the future, and we can take different steps on how we progress through the future. Next slide, please. Take care of yourself. Take care of your own needs and feelings. Participate in stuff that you enjoy. Get some exercise. Literally, as soon as I finish with you guys, I'm going to go out and take a walk. I try to do that 2 or 3 times a day. I try to hit that magical 10,000 step mark. It's important that you get exercise. It's important that you get plenty of sleep, even if that means taking a nap in the middle of the day. Our diets aren't the best always, so make sure you're eating healthy because, again, your resiliency comes from your body's ability to adapt and to adjust. So if your body doesn't have the energy that it needs to adapt and adjust, you're going to build additional stress. And we know that we have a host of additional health factors that we have to take in mind as men, as Black men in particular. Practice stress management and relaxation techniques. Figure out a little bit of yoga, again, physical exercise, meditation, breathing, prayer, guided imagery, sitting silent in a corner, just sitting for a moment and recognizing how you're breathing, taking nice deep breaths in and pausing and being conscious about how you're bringing oxygen and life energy into your body, right? That's important to do. Be proactive. Don't sit back and let things happen, right? Think about what possible impacts could be and be proactive. I know again, this is my disaster management background. When I saw the trends coming with the pandemic, I went out and stocked up. Well, I didn't even have a freezer at the home. I went out and bought a freezer, so I make sure we have plenty of food. And we're stocked, right? We're prepared for the same thing I used to preach as a Red Cross director. Are you ready to sustain yourself for a period of time until things get better? Well, this was a longer period of time than we anticipated, but we still need to be ready to prepare ourselves. So be proactive. Do the things you can to put yourself and your family and your loved ones in a better position to sustain challenges when they come. And whether that is to be mindful about your health or your finances or whatever it may be, you know, put yourself in a proactive position. Please don't ignore your problems or issues. They're still going to be there no matter how long you try to walk away from them, right? Figure out what needs to be done, make a plan, and take action. Again, I'm going to talk about Red Cross here, and Will asked me to throw this piece in there, and I want to reiterate it because it's important, right? Because if you think about it for a moment, let's say you lose everything, heavens forbid, in some type of disaster, a fire or flood or something like that, right? And you don't know what to do. It's actually very troublesome and it's very traumatic when that happens. One of the first things we have folks do is just to pause for a moment and think about what's the very first thing you need to do, right? What is the first thing you need to do? When we brought folks up from New Orleans for Katrina, one of the first things we did after we fed everybody and got them a nice warm shower was we made sure everyone had ID. right? The first proactive step that you can take, whatever that is, and whatever the circumstances is to get you to the next place. Again, I'm going to draw an analogy from the fellowship. What's that first step? Recognize, right? Recognize, whatever it is, recognize, and then make a plan and take some action. All right, next slide, please. Remain hopeful. Again, we can't, and I'm reiterating this, you can't change the past, but we can always look towards the future. And I don't know about you, but my future looks pretty bright. And it looks pretty bright because I try to take care of myself in the fashion that I'm suggesting that we all try to do. We have a powerful network here. So I'm looking at the names on the screen. It's a powerful network. Let's use this network to build that level of resiliency and community that we're all talking about. Next slide, please. I'm going to go back to the definition again, resiliency redefined. I've chopped that definition up. I'm going to give you a new definition with it. The capacity to recover quickly and adapt well in the face of difficulties, toughness, adversity, trauma, threats, or other significant sources of stress. And I'm going to leave you with saying it's our innate ability to spring back. And we know that we have that as a community. We know we have that as individuals. So let's build on that innate strength we have to be able to spring back and to take very positive and proactive actions for ourselves and our families. I do believe that's the last of my slides. I'll turn it back over to Seth or Will.
Dr. Philip Terry, we thank you very much for those excellent processes as well as mindset adjustments that you provided for us in giving us a chance to truly enhance our resilience. And we are going to take a slight pause in our conversation right now, and we're going to bring to the microphone the Prestige Health Resources President, Will Bonnet, who's going to talk about the Prestige Phone Drive.
Good afternoon again. I appreciate your presence, your support, the great words that have thus far been spoken. Prestige Community Resources recently took on a project of being able to deliver phones to people who are homeless, who are indigent, and our concern is the improvement of the quality of life and survival impact, because many of the people that we provide services for who are indigent don't have access to health care, and a phone can help to promote access, especially given the fact that in a COVID pandemic environment, virtual connections with other people and with institutions, with healthcare providers is the only way to go. Being able to connect with people virtually is very important. You should be able to access things like your medical health record, your prescriptions, your access a provider. So in many ways, if you can give a phone, you can save a life. So what we did was we developed a partnership with AT&T where we're able to buy phones and plans to support the use of the phone. And in that regard, we're talking about unlimited access to text, minutes, and data. So they have an unlimited data plan. And in many cases, it could potentially improve the quality of life for a person, but also help them stay connected to needed healthcare services that they may not have connection to. In partnership, we want to grow this program. Last year, we gave over 100 phones. So far this year, we've given out about 86. We want to get up to about 250. So we need your help to make this happen.
Do you know you can be part of something great? Do you know you can change a life right from your home? You can help us save poor families living in local communities in D.C. from the pain and depression of being underserved with basic amenities by simply donating to cover their phone bills. It's that simple. Our campaigns have helped over 2,000 people with about $56,000 in donations and 25 active volunteers. We'd love to do more. Join us at Prestige Community Resources and make the world a better place. Click the link below. donate.prestigecommunityresources.org.
So in this regard, we think that we have a very innovative program. I want to thank AmeriGroup for making the commitment to help sponsor not just this event, but also contribute toward our phone drive. For $30 a month, you can put a phone in someone's hand that will give them unlimited access to healthcare. We support training, and we deal with a lot of elderly people as well, training them in how to use Zoom and other apps so they can stay connected to people and to things that are important. I have to tell you, I'm a survivor of COVID as well. And having gone through the trauma of thinking that you're about to die, that the shame and guilt that you might affect a family member, the depression associated with completely changing your life, like COVID will turn your life upside down. And if you don't have the means to stay connected, like the one thing that helped me tremendously was that I had support. And I don't know that I would be here without that support. So if a phone is such a simple thing that we take for granted all the time, and we also know that you're not going to be able to survive in a virtual environment unless you develop the technology and the skills to do so. So I think this is an admirable initiative that we've taken on. We would like to elicit your support. You can go to our website at www.prestigecommunityresources.org. That's www.prestigecommunityresources.org. It has the link for future virtual events, as well as how to donate to our phone drive. I'm going to turn it back over to Seth. I think I've gone on long enough. Thank you for letting me share.
Will Bonnet, President of Prestige Healthcare Resources. Will, we thank you very much for those words about the phone drive, as well as mentioning that you are a very living example of the resiliency that we're talking about today, as you are a COVID-19 survivor. We want to also thank everyone on the webinar right now for witnessing resiliency in real time as we have overcome some technical challenges today. As we continue our Men's Health Month conversation, Enhancing Community Resilience, brought to you by Prestige Healthcare Resources, as well as AmeriGroup, M&T Bank, Bread for the City, and the DC Department of Behavioral Health. And so the next voice that we'll hear from is none other than Dr. Willie Jolly. He has been described simultaneously as a world-class award-winning speaker and singer, best-selling author, and media personality. No matter the venue, regarding his exciting television appearances to his Sirius XM radio show to corporate audiences like Walmart, GM, Comcast, Verizon, Marriott, or the $1 Million Round Table, Dr. Willie Jolly keeps it moving with high energy and enthusiasm as he delivers nuggets on how every person can live a better life one day at a time. Dr. Jolly holds a Doctorate of Ministry degree in faith-driven achievement from the California Graduate School of Theology, a master's degree in theology from Wesley Theological Seminary, and a BA in psychology and sociology from the American University. There are many motivational speakers, and then there is the one, the only, the incomparable Dr. Willie Jolly. Welcome, Dr. Jolly.
I'm trying to make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Hold on. I can't hear you, though. Let's see. My phone here. All right. There you go. Hopefully everybody can hear me. And I'm hoping I can be heard. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Great. Well, I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it, just a tiny little minute, but our eternity is wrapped up in it. I want to thank you for this minute, this moment, this opportunity to come to everybody who might be gathered on this line. And in fact, I want all of y'all who are on the line, call somebody, call Lottie, call Dottie, call everybody. It's time for us to get this party going to another level. And so I'm grateful for being able to be here and being able to have a moment with you. First, I want to thank Prestige Community Resources for putting on this program. And I want to thank you for making this a reality. It's so needed. Second, I want to thank Amerigroup for being a sponsor and putting their resources to it. Then I got to give a special shout out to my friend, Will Barnett. Now, y'all got to know how and why I'm here today. Oh, John Smith is here, too. I got to shout out John Smith. What's up, John? You know I love that brother. You know that. He sends me emails. We stay connected. But I got to talk about Will Barnett. How is it that I'm here? Many people said, you know, sent me notes saying, hey, you're going to be on this. I've gotten notes from all over the place, all over the country, in fact, because the internet is worldwide. They said, how is it that they got you? I said, it's the power of relationship. The power of relationship. I've known Will Barnett since we were born. Okay, we were neighbors on the same street on Shepherd Street in Washington, D.C., in Petworth. And we grew up together. And his brothers, Jimmy and Rudy, were my buddies, and he was friends with my brother Noble. And I sat many nights over his house, and his mama cooked these delicious meals. And I remember his dad, his mom, and so we were neighbors. So when he called, he said, man, I need a favor. I said, done, whatever it is. You know, I got a book called An Attitude of Excellence. And one of the pieces in the book says, the answer is yes. Now, what's the question? And that's about service, that you serve people. Well, the answer when he called and said, I need a favor, I said, the answer is yes. What you need? The answer is yes. He said, I need you to speak. And we don't have your big budget and all that. I said, man, look, don't worry about it. I'll be there. Whatever it takes, I'll be there. Because I remember their relationship. I remember his parents. I remember how they poured into me. So I'm grateful to be here. I want to also say to Brother Coakley and to Trayvon White, good friend of mine, and Dr. Philip B. Terry Smith, thank you for your comments, because they really were right on with where we're going. We got a lot going on here right now, and I wanted to make sure that I applaud them and celebrate them because they gave such good content. We're about time for content. And that's what I want to, hopefully in a few minutes I got with you, give you something that hopefully you can take in content. So they gave great content, and I want to applaud and celebrate them. I am a Washingtonian, second generation. Even though most of the years, many people would read my books, hear me on the radio and say, where do you live? I see them around. What are you doing in D.C.? Where are you speaking? I say, I live here. Now, I'm not here that often, but I actually live here. Ward 4, have always lived in Washington. But most times during a regular year, I'm gone most times. For many years, I was on the Get Motivated tour, and we were going every week from Monday to Friday, where it was me and Les Brown and Damon John and so many others that we did the tour in cities all over the country. So I would be gone, but hey, I'm stuck like everybody else. But here's what I have done. And here's what I want to say as we talk about getting your health, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. I think all the panelists gave such good things. I want to give you some strategies, though, from a couple of my books. Most of you know I wrote a book called A Setback is a Setup for a Comeback, and that book has gone on to be a global bestseller. I'm very grateful for that. And then after that came a book called Turn Setbacks into Greenbacks. And some of the principles that I wrote in those books, I think will really apply to what we're going through here today. Look, here's something I want you to capture. Methods are many. Principles are few. Methods may change, but principles never do. You throw a rock up 100 times, it's going to come down 100 times because there's such a thing called principle called gravity. What I'm going to share with you in these next few minutes are principles that will impact your health, your wealth, your finances, your security, and your comfort, even in these tough times. Now, this week I've been on interview after interview after interview. I did a radio tour on Monday all over the country, doing 5-minute radio interviews with stations, because everybody wants a comeback right now. What do we do in these challenging times? And I told them I start off, first of all, understanding this, that we are in an unprecedented time, as Dr. Phillips said, and as Patrick said, we're at unprecedented time. We got a pandemic, followed by an economic downturn, followed by massive job loss, followed by racial strife, followed by social upheaval. Look here, man, I'm waiting for the locusts to show up. Locusts, I know they're coming. But here's what we got. What we got right now is crisis. And the word crisis is a unique word. In 1959, John F. Kennedy gave an incredible speech, and he said something that was profound. He said the word crisis, if you look at the way it defined and written in Asian cultures, that they have two dual meanings at the same time. One, great danger. Two, great opportunity. This is a time of great opportunity. So what we got to do is we've got to get a new mindset. I talk about mindset. That's what I make my living talking about, mindset. How to change your thinking so you can change your future. Stuff is going to happen. We're just in the midst of a lot of stuff happening at the same time. But stuff going to happen in your life. We are going to have some crisis somewhere along the way. And so what you must do is understand that this setback really is a setup for a comeback. But what you got to do is work on your mindset. And what does that take? Well, it's going to take some new thinking. Now, for those who don't know me, somebody might say, well, who is this guy? Well, for those who don't know me, Dr. Willie Jolly, Washingtonian, I used to be in the music business. 30 years ago, I was a nightclub singer. But one night I went in a nightclub, club owner said, we made a change. We like your band, but we found it was a cheaper way to fill up nightclubs. We bought a karaoke machine. I said, but what about my bills? And I learned about that night that nobody really cared about your bills but you and the people you owe. I was devastated. I had a crisis. I didn't know what I was going to do, but somebody blessed me with a motivational cassette tape. Y'all remember cassette tapes? Any of y'all cassette tape? I had a motivational cassette tape. And on that tape, there was a guy who said, in 5 years, you'll be the same person you are today, except two things. The people you meet who inspire you and the books you read that empower you. Wow. And so they gave me that motivational tape and a book called Think and Grow Rich. And the people you meet, the books you read, And I started reading books. I had never been a reader, but I started reading motivational books. And I started going to seminars and meeting successful people and listening and learning. And it changed. And as a part of that, I changed from being a broke, busted nightclub singer. I got a job with the Washington, D.C. public school system as a drug prevention coordinator. And from the little kids, talking to them, the teachers would say, could you come to my teacher group? And someone in the teachers group can say, can you come to my church? Someone in the church say, can you come to my company? And before long it grew. And then Les Brown, the great motivational speaker, heard me and invited me to be on tour with him and Gladys Knight on the Music and Motivation Dream Team tour as the opening act. And that led me to being invited to and introduced to media people. And I got a little radio show. And the radio show got popular and got syndicated. And then it landed up on Sirius XM. Now you can hear me on Sirius XM. I'm grateful to have now the #1 self-help show in the country on Sirius XM, channel 141. But you can also hear me on Radio 1 every morning on 48 stations across America with Get Up Morning with Erica Campbell at 8:20 with my Wake Up and Win. But also you can hear me online with us putting information on IG and Instagram and Facebook. And so that led to a book publisher hearing me on the radio one day, called my office and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? I said, no, I never thought about it. He said, let me make you an offer. I said, I just thought about it. And my first book came out, It Only Takes a Minute, Change Your Life, became a national bestseller. Then my book, A Setback, Set Up for a Comeback, came out, became a global bestseller. Then turned setbacks into greenbacks. Then An Attitude of Excellence. Then Make Love, Make Money, Make It Last, a marriage book with my wife, and Chicken Soup for the Soul. And things started happening. And then 1999, I got a call from Toastmasters. You've been named one of the top 5 speakers in the world this year. Former winners include Colin Powell, Norman Schwarzkopf, Nelson Mandela. I was shocked. I said, you sure you got the right person? They said, Willie Jolly, yeah. Washington, D.C., yeah. You're the one. I said, but they are big dogs. I'm a little dog. And she said something I'll never forget. Little dog keep yapping loud enough and strong enough. Big dogs start to hear about you. Moral of the story, you're going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some crisis moments. Now, what do you do in those crisis moments is what's going to be important. Because we're going through a crisis, and not what happens to you. It's what you do about it in those moments that really matters at the end of the day. I'm going to give you a couple principles. Some of them have already been expressed, but I'll say them a little differently. Number one, you got to stay positive. It's critically important to stay positive. Now, how do you stay positive in a negative world? As someone said, most of the news you're going to hear on the report is bad news. How many terrorist attacks there are? How many new COVID cases there are? How many people died? How much are we losing in jobs? We're going to hear nothing but bad news. So you got to make a decision that you fill yourself up with the pure, the powerful, and the positive. It's your choice. See, you can either program your mind or you can let the world or television program your mind. It's your choice. So I recommend you stay positive. How do you do it? Remember that your input determines your output. Garbage in, garbage out. Good stuff in, good stuff out. So I make a point every day. First thing, I got a routine. Someone talked about it earlier, routine. I got a routine. When my eyes wake up in the morning, when I wake up and I look up and I see that my eyes are working and I'm still seeing something that I saw last night before I went to bed. First thing I do is say, thank you. I literally, out of my mouth, say, thank you for another day. Because somebody was planning to do stuff today and they didn't wake up. They didn't wake up. So let me tell you something. Every day above ground is a good day. You got to remind yourself of that. You don't believe it? Try missing one, okay? It'll change your perspective. So first you got to be positive. But then you got to fill yourself up with the pure, the powerful, and the positive. I make sure to read or listen to something positive every morning. Before I get going, I even listen to my message on radio. I send out a free video to the world every day to the global world. I send out a 1-minute message. If you go to winwithwillie.com, winwithwillie.com, you can actually sign up and get a free video as well as my weekly newsletter. So I fill up with something pure, the powerful power. Then what somebody said earlier, I get moving. I do some sort of physical activity first thing in the morning. Why is that? Because it's called endorphins. Endorphins are a natural blessing that God put in you. It's a drug that God gave you in your body to give you positive thinking, positive influence, positive feeling. So I get up, I get going, and it just take a few minutes before I'm feeling better. Now, here's the last thing. This is a secret. When I get up and get going, I usually either take a bike ride or a walk or something. Now, I have my mask on and everything. I don't be fooling around. And by the way, let me tell you, do what the doctors tell you, Dr. Fauci and all of them. They say 6 feet apart, social distance, wash your hands, and wear a mask. Now, somebody might say, you know what? I don't want to stay 6 feet apart. That's your choice. But you got to understand with every choice, there's a consequence. So you got either 6 feet apart or 6 feet under. Your choice. You choose. I choose to stay 6 feet apart. I wash my hands. I wear a mask, okay? Now, here's what I do, though. This is an attitude jump start. Attitude jump start. I say good morning to at least 10 people every morning. Every day I say good morning. I find people to talk to. I go looking for them. Good morning. Now, when I do that, some of the people say good morning back. Some of them say what's good about it. Some of them say nothing. Some of them grunt. You know what? I still say it. You know why? Because I'm not saying it for them. I'm saying it for me. Because if I say good morning to 10 people, I've heard 10 times good morning. It's going to be a good morning. And if I get a good morning in my mindset, then I'm on my way to a good afternoon. And I get a good morning, a good afternoon, I'm on my way to a good evening. I had a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I had a good day. I repeat that day 7 times. I had a good week. I repeat that week 4 times. I had a good month. I repeat that month 12 times. I had a good year. And every year gets sweeter and better because I keep working on my mindset. Now, you got to be positive. It's a process. It doesn't just say because you want to do it. You got to work on it. You got to work on it. You got to work on it. Fill yourself up with the pure, the powerful, and the positive. Number two, don't panic. Don't panic. I know this is tough times. You might have lost your job. You might have had a personal economic downturn. But do not panic. Why is that? Because the word panic is taken from the Greek word to choke. And when you panic, you choke off the air to your brain. And when you choke off the air to your brain, you cannot think clearly. You cannot think clearly. You cannot make wise decisions. You cannot make wise decisions when a decision is necessary to be made. You end up making a poor decision. 1929, there was a stock market crash. People panicked. Some jumped off the bridges, not realizing the market would come back bigger and better than ever. Let me tell you something I know. This too shall pass. I know that. And I'm planning to stay around for this to pass. So that's why I'm doing those things. Wash my hands, wear the mask, 6 feet. I want to be here when it passes. Now, let me tell you another thing. Dr. Phillip and Patrick, I know Will, we old enough. Some of y'all, some of the people jumping on here might be youngsters. They might be young folk, but old enough to know that you've been around a while. You know that this is going to happen again. Okay, it might not be a pandemic, but if you've been around long enough, you know that stuff happens. Okay, and in 2001, we had a terrorist attack, and then a few years later, we had an economic downturn, and now we got a COVID-19, and in the midst, we got racial strife. And let me tell you something: you hang around long enough, there's gonna be another crisis within the next decade. So prepare for it now. Get your resources and start where, you might not can prepare for this one now in terms of your money and all of that, but you can start preparing for the next one. You hang it in, you live long enough, you're going to have another one. And so what is it that works on your mental health? Don't panic. And then I thought it was so wonderfully, both of the folks this morning earlier said, don't willingly participate nor commiserate. Don't willingly participate by sitting in front of the television all day long, watching the gloom and doom. Look, if I took a sponge, I put that sponge in a bucket of water. Now, what is a sponge designed to do? It's designed to soak up water. Now, if I took it and put it in a bucket of water, at some point it becomes overwhelmed. It cannot soak up any more water. It's useless. The same is true for you. You were designed to be productive, to do something with your life that makes a difference. Now, if you sit in front of television all day and it just puts gloom and gloom and gloom and doom over you, before long you, how you doing? Okay, just making it. Oh, woe is me. No, you cannot watch all of that. You cannot handle it. None of us, we weren't prepared. It's just like that sponge. There's only so much you can take. So I turn off the television. I got about 30 minutes. That's all I need, bad news, just to catch up. The rest of the time, I'm listening to some good news. In fact, I started a Saturday morning program on Facebook at 10 o'clock on my Jolly Good News Facebook page, Jolly Good News Facebook, called the Jolly Good News Report. It's nothing but good news. And every week I tell you nothing but good news. Like, rather than tell you how many people got diagnosed with COVID or how many people died, I don't dwell on that. No, I tell you how many people recovered. As of last week, there were 5,500,000 people who were recovered. Every Saturday, I tell you how many have recovered and how many are sitting at home. You need that good news. And then I tell you some other good news stories because we need good news. The Bible says in Proverbs that good news is good for your spirit. It's good for your soul. It's good for your body. Maya Angelou said good news puts starch in your spine. Come on, somebody. It make you feel better. And that's what we need, some good news. So, a couple of things I want to give you. I want to give you some gifts. First thing, I told you, somebody blessed me when I was at my worst place. I was fired, broke, busted, disgusted, but somebody gave me a motivational cassette and a book, Think and Grow Rich. If you go to wjspeaks.com/gift, wjspeaks.com/gift, I'm going to give you that same book that someone gave me, Think and Grow Rich. It's my gift to you because I know how it changed my life. And I'm grateful that I was one of the 53 thought leaders that were chosen by the Napoleon Hill Foundation to celebrate the 50th anniversary of that book. And so I can give it to my friends. Y'all my friends. You're a friend of Will Barnett? You're a friend of mine. It's simple as that. So go and get it. It's my gift to you. And there are also some audios from my XM show with Wally Amos and others that are gifts there. Free resources to help you with your mindset. And then if you want to, and on that winwithwillie.com site, there's also a song I released during the pandemic called We'll Get Through This. And my friend Les Brown has promoted it and made it a popular song on his Facebook. He said he's fighting cancer. He said, it helps me every day as I wake up. I listen to that song in the morning and listen at night. So go to winwithwillie.com, look at We'll Get Through This. Go to wjspeaks.com/gift. And those things will bless you. And if you want some of my resources, my books, you can just go to wjspeaks.com/success. And you can get my books, you can get them signed and autographed to you, or you can just get a digital download and it'll come to you. I don't care. I just want my people to help people get through this. Last but not least, I told you gotta be positive. You gotta, you cannot panic. You don't let don't be willing to just settle for the bad news. But here, and then I told you that about endorphins and exercise, but here's the most important. Of all the things I'm gonna tell you that this most, be prayerful. Be prayerful. In tough times, folks, you need prayer. Now, some people might not believe in prayer. They might not believe such a thing. But let me tell you what I said. Somebody said it earlier. One of the gentlemen said about the power of hope. Prayer gives you hope. And hope is necessary in challenging times because there's nothing more pitiful than a person who's hopeless. Who's hopeless. And there was a study done, University of Texas. They took 4 little frogs, put them in a bucket of water. They kept them there till their air was almost extinguished. And at the last minute, they pulled them out. Then they took those same 4 frogs who had been through something and had hope. Put them in that bucket of water, but took 4 new frogs who had never been through anything and put them in a separate bucket of water. And they held them there till the air was almost extinguished. And then at the last minute, they held on they kept them there another minute. The old frogs who had been through something held on because they said, I'm hopeful that what happened last time will happen again. But the new frogs who had no idea of hope gave up and died. And I'm saying to you, prayer gives you hope. It's a evidence of things not seen, the hope for the future. I have prayer every day because I'm grateful. And I thank God. I find something to be grateful for. God, thank you for my family. Thank you that we got a few dollars in the bank. We got some food. Thank you, Lord, for the fact that I woke up. I find something to be grateful for because let me tell you, gratitude gives you hope. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna get through this. It's gonna be all right. We're gonna get through this. And you got that prayer. Now, I also tell people when you pray, do what my grandmama told me. After you pray, move your feet. Move your feet. Faith without works is dead. Lady come up to me one day and said, hey, I listened to you on the radio. I like your messages. Hey, I need a job. I said, okay, what are you doing to get a job? She said, I prayed about it. I said, very good. What else? She said, oh, that's all. I said, what? She said, that's all. I'm waiting for God. Let me tell you what my friend Wally Amos said on my interview when he was on my XM show and we put it on my podcast. He said, Willie, many people are waiting for God to drop something in their lap. He said, I found out if you want God to drop something in your lap, you better move your lap with God dropping stuff. Am I right about it? Look, prayer without works is dead. See, I love the Asian thought. There's a Chinese proverb that says, he who waits for a roasted, barbecued duck to fly into his mouth, wait a long time. It might come one of these days, but not now. It won't come quick. So I want to, again, thank you all for what you do. I want to thank Will and Prestige Community Resources for being concerned about men's health. Last thing I do have to say this. tomorrow, man. Not tomorrow. Oh, actually next week. But I have to go get the consultation by phone tomorrow. I'm getting my colonoscopy. I'm getting it done. Have you had your colonoscopy? Have you had your prostate exam? You know, unfortunately, Black men die at the highest rate of prostate cancer in America because we don't want to go get that prostate exam. But it is critically important that you take care of your health. Your family depends upon you. Your community depends on you. So go do whatever it takes. Go get that exam. Get your colon exam. Get your prostate exam. Get your blood pressure checked. If you have to take medication, take the medication and change your diet so you can start to impact what medication. You gotta eat healthy, plant-based diet. We've got to change. One of the things from this pandemic I've learned is that we've seen the highest number of African Americans are the ones who are affected initially. Why was that? Part of that was because we had a lot of underlying health issues, and part of that was because of our diet, or our lack of exercise. We've got to exercise. We've got to watch our diet. And that just because grandma ate lots of fried food don't mean you got to eat a lot of fried food. It just is what it is. And so we got to do some differences. So I'm encouraging you, get that colonoscopy, get that prostate exam, start changing your diet, read up about diet. And last but not least, after you've worked on your health, start working on your wealth, because money will help you down the road with the next crisis that's coming. Oh, it's coming. I don't know when, but I do know you live long enough, history teaches us it's going to come. Will Barnett, you are, man, you know I'm proud of you, man. I am proud of you. I am grateful for you. I love you, man. I love your brothers. I love your mama. Let me tell y'all real quick. I gotta let y'all hear about his mama. His mama wasn't about this big. I mean, she was, you talk about somebody big on the inside, boy, her boy shot up over her by the time they were 11, 12 years old. But she could take him up by that neck and say, you better do what am I right about it, Will? She did not play. I mean, she did not play, and we all knew that Miss Barnett, she had great respect in our neighborhood. Miss Barnett, what a wonderful, wonderful lady, and somebody who could cook. Oh, Lord, we had some good food over there. It was really good. It was different cultures all mixed up together. Boy, it was something else. So look, gentlemen, I want to thank again Dr. Philip B. Terry Smith. Philip, let's stay connected. Please send me an email. Patrick, you were just fabulous. Thank you for that. I want to say, John Smith, you know you my guy. So any of y'all I can ever be a help with. During this time, one thing we got to do, we got to help each other. That's for sure. Each one help each other. So if I can help anybody, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me know what I can do to be of help. We're trying to grow a community, and we're in the midst of social upheaval. But I know one thing, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And we've got to change this now, because we cannot have my attorney's son. When I saw George Floyd, I didn't know him. But when I saw him on the ground, his face changed in the middle of that episode. And it changed from George Floyd to my attorney son, or my stockbroker nephew. And I said, this cannot happen ever again. So we got to do it. God bless y'all. Thank y'all. It's been a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure.
Dr. Jolly, thank you.
Seth, my pleasure. Thank you for coordinating and making this happen, my man. And I look to personally get some time with all y'all when this is over and do some more things with you.
If I could interject for a second, I just have to acknowledge you as well, you know, Dr. William Jolly. We came out of, we were living under the lash. That's right. In the 70s. You know, when I think about your family, I think about your dad. You know, your dad and my dad were veterans.
That's right.
And they put their lives on the line for this country. And I think about what's going on now, and that's not what they fought for.
Right.
And
right.
Now it's our turn, right? To be the men that they raised us to be.
Yeah.
And pull everybody else up.
Yeah.
Spread your wisdom, your knowledge. This is a labor of love. And I commend everybody who's on this call. You know, I commend the people who aren't on the call that are out there struggling, that need support, need services. And, you know, we have to do that. But, you know, Willie, I love and support you, man, any way I can. I just want to thank you for participating this morning, as well as Dr. Terry, Patrick Coakley from Amerigroup. I think all of you guys have been doing some big things in this community. And during this time, this is where men have to step up.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these guys that are walking around, you know, they're not men. They haven't grown to the point where they can take emotional responsibility for themselves as well as for this community. And we have to change that paradigm, because we're facing some of the toughest times that our communities have ever seen. The opioid crisis, we've lost over 300 males, right? We went from number 14 to number 4 in the country with the amount of overdoses. We had over 300 overdoses in 3 years. That's not acceptable. The issues with social justice, it's almost as if, you know, the media and, you know, the police force have sensationalized, you know, what people see as a war on our youth. And we can't accept our kids being in the line of fire. And I have a daughter who probably had 3 or 4 funerals before she graduated out of high school. One of the funerals, a kid, throat was cut, body left in the back of a car, the car was set on fire. That should never happen. Our kids are growing up at war. They are growing up in an environment exposed to things they should never have to be exposed to. And we have to change that paradigm. We have to take our communities back. We have to take our healthcare system back. We have to focus on loving each other, because we're not going to get through this by ourselves individually. We have to get through this as a collective group.
Right.
We have to get on the same page.
I think you're doing this today, Will. Putting on an event like this is a great start. Each one reach one. Each one do what they can, wherever they can, with whatever they can. If we just do that kind of thing. I'm gonna tell you one thing. As I was riding my bike this morning, I thought about that I'm going to start putting on my radio shows. One of the things, we know that we are seeing a change, a sea change in America. And we're seeing a sea change in not just us, but in terms of our community. Benjamin Franklin had a wonderful quote, and I thought it was profound. He said, "Change and justice are served when the unaffected become as outraged as the affected." And that's what we're seeing now. I live here, as I said, in Washington. We went to 16th Street a couple Fridays ago for a protest, and 2/3 of the people who were protesting with Black Lives Matter were white. So this is a sea change, because this is the first time we've seen a social upheaval where it was just us, not just us being it. Now, here's the other thing, though. What can we do? There are little things that we must do that will start having a big impact. One of the things I've been telling all my friends, something I did some time ago, but I've continued, is that I stopped using the N-word. I stopped using the N-word. I'm not gonna use that word, because it does not build us up. It does not impact us up, and we need to lift and shift. So I'm not going to use the N-word. And then I'm going to spend some money, as much as I can, in a Black business. As often as you can, put your money in a Black hand. Not because I'm not affecting the other communities. I love the other community. Everybody knows I have fans and followers on every community. But I spoke for the Hasidic Jews insurance companies. They're my dear friends. They brought me in a number of times in New York City to speak. And they come to my table with my books, and they look and they say, "Wow, these are really good books. They touch them and they feel them. And they say, well, have a good day. And they say, well, we can't buy your books. Not that we don't like you, we love you. But we cannot buy your book. We have a cultural part of our community that we must spend our money in our community to keep our community. It wasn't anything. They like me. They paid me my fee. So I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad at all. I said, y'all pay me my full fee. They paid me my full fee. They had no problem with it. They just did. Many of the people didn't buy my books because they said, it's nothing personal, it's cultural. And then when we get that same kind of mindset, we're going to put money in our community. We're going to support our businesses. Our businesses will flourish, and we'll have a new economic engine that will help us to grow. So this is a great time. I want us to look at this time at crisis, back where we started. Great danger, but great opportunity. This is going to be a great time for opportunity, and I'm excited about what's going to come out of this. So thank y'all. Will, where do we go from here? I mean, Brother Seth, what do we do now?
What I was going to suggest is that we move into panel discussion.
Okay, great.
I was looking to see if there were any questions from the audience. One of the questions I would have, and I'm going to shoot it to Dr. Terry. How do you instill? Because I heard Willie's side of it, right? But you have been on the front line with dealing with crisis, 9/11, Pentagon, Hurricane Katrina. I admire your commitment, whatever the disaster is. How do you instill hope in a hopeless community, in a community where people have been so beaten that they're struggling?
Yeah, Willie nailed it on the head, though, right? Because hope comes from within, and it comes from action, right? He actually mentioned something a minute ago that I wanted to comment on, and that is that it's all about giving back and feeding your community, right? And so when I've gone into communities that have been completely devastated, and if you've not been to a community that's been completely wiped out by a hurricane or a tornado or a disaster where there's literally nothing, where people walking around picking up off of the ground just some little relic to remind them of who they are or what their family is, right? When you've been to such total devastation, the thing that I always walk away from is that people hold on to the notion of community, and even in the worst of times, it brings out the best in us, right? So when things are at their absolute worst, humans tend to step up. And we do that through that sense of community. Dr. Jolly was right on the money, man. And he was saying that it's about how we make those connections and how we feed ourselves and how we see within ourselves the ability to survive and to move forward. We can't underestimate that notion of community and connection and family, right? So my hope comes from this type of conversation. My hope comes from seeing images of young people that are helping each other and even in the midst of social protest are banding together. That's where hope springs eternal for me. That's where it comes from. That notion that even in the worst of times, humans can and will take care of each other. I've referenced the fellowship quite a bit today, and I want to go back to that because it's about that notion of even when I'm at my worst, there might be someone that's worse off than I am, and I may have something to give to pull somebody else up, right? So even when I'm at my worst, I know I can always give something to someone else. And that sense of hope and restoring hope, I think, is important for all of us.
Yeah, and this is Patrick. I'd also like to jump in and sort of riff off something that Dr. Terry said earlier, too. I think it's important that we also begin to normalize our approach to either trauma or mental health. And what I mean by that is that, first off, like we said, addressing your own personal mental health being a normal thing. Aging and disability are part of life. Mental health is a normal part of life. And so also, when we are dealing with our own mental health, giving ourselves grace to do that. But when we hear of younger men in our family or younger family members saying, hey, I need to do this thing and address my mental health in this way, not poo-pooing them, and not saying, well, I sucked it up, why can't you? But saying, you know what? I'm gonna help you do that. In fact, I'm gonna tell you some ways that I've been doing that, and we share in this together. More ways, again, to bring it to the level and make it so that the lift isn't as hard. You're not doing it by yourself anymore.
So Dr. Coakley, I like what you said there about normalizing, and then referring back to Dr. Jolly's example of the book sales, and that there were cultural narratives that kept them from purchasing his book. So how do we as a community begin to normalize cultural narratives and strength of that same way? How do we implement those kinds of narratives? And as you talked about normalizing wellness, mental wellness and otherwise, how do we implement those things in a way that they begin to take hold across the spectrum of the community?
If I can jump in on that, it's for me, it's about respect, right? And if there's one thing that troubles me about some of the things I see in our community is that we've lost respect for each other. I really love what Dr. Jolly said about greeting everyone in the morning. I do the same thing. When I take my morning walks, I say hello to every neighbor, right? I wave, and my neighbors sit, we call it the garage smokes, right? So all of the men have their, I live in the suburbs out here in Anne Arundel County, and all the men have their man cave in the garage, and they're all out there smoking their cigars in the evening. And, you know, we all wave. I don't know any of them by name. I haven't been in this community very long, but we all make that connection and we wave. We've lost, I think, or it may have been robbed from us, and let's be honest about that as well, but that sense of community and connection and respect, you know, greeting each other, making eye contact with each other. If you can't walk past a group of young men of whatever race, whatever culture, and make eye contact with them so that they see your humanity and you see theirs, right? If we get back to that, right, that notion of respect, I think we can re-strengthen that sense of community that we all had. And again, someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was Dr. Jolly that mentioned it, that, you know, in my generation, everybody on the block knew each other. I got to tell you guys a quick story, and Will's heard this before, and I see a couple of the names on the call as far as seen this. My grandmother, who just passed away, I guess it's been 2 years now, was my role model. She lived to 92. And about a year or so before she passed away, I took her, and I adopted 2 teenagers. I took one of my teenage sons down to our old neighborhood. We grew up in Baltimore. Anyone who's familiar with Baltimore, I grew up on Fayette Street. Right across the street from my house was Samson. So if you've had Samson's biscuits, that's what I grew up on, right? You know, so my grandmother wanted to, and we had 4 generations that lived in our house, right? It was I was the latest generation when I came along in the 60s, right? And so my grandmother wanted to go back and see what had happened in the community. And Baltimore, as you know, it has been troubled of the old house, and she wanted to walk, so we walked up the block. And by the time we got up to the church at the end of the block that we all grew up in, it was during the summer, and there was a group of kids out doing the vacation Bible school. And there was a woman who was clearly in recovery, barely, and I'll just leave it at that. But she was helping with the folks that were facilitating the vacation Bible study. And my grandmother, being who she is, engaged in the conversation. And the woman looked over and looked strange at her and said, "You're that lady that used to live on the corner." Now, my family hasn't lived in that block since the late 70s, 78, 79. And here was someone that remembered my grandmother, quote unquote, the evil woman that lived on the corner. And why did they remember her? Because everybody in the block knew everybody in the block. There was a fire hydrant in the street post. The kids didn't go any farther than that. Why? Because Mr. Jones, who lived on the other side of the street post, would yell at our parents and told them what we did, right? So we've lost that sense of community. And I think if we work to regain that and regain that level of respect and recognize that we have to lift each other up. There was a gesture I saw just a moment ago. Got it? Lift up and move on, right? Help each other lift up and move on. And by doing that, we rebuild that sense. Some communities haven't lost it. Hasidic Jews up in New York are a good example. They have that community. We watch Asian families that come in, literally 4 houses down from me. I know they're violating all kinds of zoning regulations because there's at least 3 different family units living in that house, but they're taking care of each other. We've we need to get back to that sense. And gentlemen, it starts with us. It starts by the example that we set with our kids and with our family, and it starts with how I take care of me. That's the example I've set for my kids, for my sons. It starts with how I look out for my nieces and nephews, though they live miles apart from me. So this whole notion of resiliency really talks about me taking care of me so that I can lift up others around me. And by doing that example, I think we go a long way.
Well, I want to just ask one other question to add to that, and anybody on the panel can chime in, please. But Dr. Terry, the way you've laid that all out in terms of the history and the meaning of it all, and so I would ask then, what is one step? What is one first step that we could walk away today, and each of us in our respective neighborhoods could implement one step today that will begin to recapture that level of respect that you so eloquently talked about? And anyone in the panel,
I would give an idea. One thing that I recommend everybody do: critical conversations. Have critical conversations with people in your neighborhood. Now, I live in a neighborhood I still in DC, that has changed from an all Black neighborhood to a gentrified neighborhood. And so my neighbors are different colors, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, straight, gay. But one of the things I've been doing, I'm making a point to do, is I'm having critical conversations with people about Black Lives Matter and why I feel like I feel, or why it's important to have that conversation. And some of these people that I've been having conversations with, I've made a point to call friends who don't look like me, say, can we talk about race for a moment? I might have known them for 25 years. We've never talked about race. They always say the same thing. I don't see color. I don't see you as, I don't see your color. And I say, I appreciate that, but this time I want you to see it. I want you to see it, and I want to share with you that even though I've had success in the business world and the publishing world and the speaking world, end of the day, I'm a Black man. That's right. We got to have a conversation about that. Let's talk about it. And so you'll understand my heart. And I shared a story on a video, if you go on my Facebook page, called Lessons I Learned from My Dad. In 1968. Now, Will remember the riots in 1968. We remember Mr. Ginsburg's store got looted. We remember because we were right there at 13th and Shepherd. And the next, it was a Thursday night when MLK got killed. And the next day, my dad, who was a journalist, said, let's walk down to 14th Street. We walked down to 14th Street, about 14th and not quite Harvard, 14th Gresham, somewhere in there. There was a giant food store that set back off of 14th Street. You remember, Will. And when we got there, it was being looted. But the police had thrown up their hands and said, go at it. We don't care. We don't care. So I said to my dad, can we go some cakes and some cookies and some pies? We can have some goodies. Come on, let's go get it. And my dad said, no. I said, what? He said, no. If you didn't pay for it, if you didn't buy it, then it's not yours. I said, but no one will know. He said, you will know, and I will know. He said, integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. Yes. Character is doing the right thing that you must do because you know it's in you. So always remember, your character and your integrity are not for sale. That was a critical conversation my dad had with me when I was 8 or 9 years old. I am in my 60s. I still remember it to this day and have tried to live that. So what can we do? One thing, pass our value sets to our children, to our friends. Here's our value. And I always tell my value points with my children with a story. So it will remain in their mind. Because that's how Jesus taught, with stories, so that people remember him. He understood the power of story. I tell them a story that impact. And then I tell my friends about Black Lives Matter and how I saw my son on the ground. My Mercedes driving, lawyer, Howard University Law School, New York bar, first time passing on a first try, son on the ground. And so it's critical that we understand it. It's not Black Lives Matter. And I had one friend I had to have a conversation with, because he said, well, the way I read it, it says only Black Lives Matter. I said, no. I said, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean only Black lives. It means our lives have value as well as everybody else's. That's fair. And I said, now, he said, well, don't all lives matter? That's when I got him. Oh, I was waiting for him to say that. Oh, all lives matter? I said, now, if your house was on fire, your house was on fire, and it had been set on fire by some arsonist, and it was the only one in the block that was burning down to the ground, and you called the fireman, would you expect them to put water on all the houses? No. He said, no. I said, where were you? He said, you put it on the one that's burning down. Our house is burning down. It's hurting right now. We need to let you know our house needs focus. We need the people to stop killing our children and our boys for stupid reasons, for a $20 bill, or for being in a car, then you're a little intoxicated. My friends from Australia called and said, you know, we never put handcuffs on people. Our police would have said to them, let me drive you home, man. Let me just drive you.
I want to reply to something, you know, Willie just brought up. And it's a personal experience for me that some years ago, you know, I was living in the suburbs, had the 4-bedroom house and what I thought were the trappings of success. Somebody broke in my house. They stole over $50,000 worth of jewelry. And it wasn't the jewelry that hurt. It was the sentimental value, because in that jewelry was my father's cufflinks, was my mother's wedding ring. And these were things I wanted to pass on to my children. And then there was a part of me that was angry because I had been violated. Some people had come into my house, but then there was another part of me. And this is the rational, this was God talking, you know, well, what is your legacy? Is it the money that you leave your children? And having been around for as long as I have, I'm 63 now, you know, I've seen kids go through money. I've gone through money. And the reality is, if I leave my kids $1 million, they'll go through it. They may invest it, they may do whatever. But my legacy has to be more than just the money I leave or the material possessions. And legacy is really all about the lessons that you pass on to your children and to your community. That we as men have to take the responsibility and the lead to ensure that each of us pass on that value system, you know, that Willie was talking about. Do the things that Dr. Terry and Patrick Coakley were talking about. Engage people. You know, my daughter looked up the other day, she said, you know, Dad, everybody knows you. That's true. Because I need people in my life. For me to live, I can't live in a void. I have to reach out to people, and when I see people less fortunate than I am, I ran into somebody yesterday, had not washed her clothes in over a month, you know, hasn't been able to get out and do grocery shopping, living under the lash, but she's still out there trying to help people. She's a contract tracer. She helps people who, you know, got COVID. And, you know, the blessing is that there are more resources than we realize in our community. If we don't engage people, we won't know what those resources are. You know, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. And today I need people. For me to live, for me to have an impact, we all need each other. It's just that simple. Amen. I'm going to say to the panelists that are here, if you have any last remarks, this is the time to do it. Then I'm going to do an update on some resources for you guys, and I'll turn it back to Seth. So, Dr. Jolly, Terry Smith, and Patrick Coakley.
One last thing, if I may, we have an opportunity to really be a help in our own communities related to mental health. And one of those opportunities is let us not look away when we see mental health needs in ourselves as well as in our families. We have a tendency that for certain times in the lives, especially of young people, the quarter life crisis, about the time they're 25, that's normally the first time that someone in your life will have a mental health crisis. Be aware that that age is key, and be supportive of them. Don't just belie their actions to being moody youth or being discontent, or just being small trauma. Be there for them. Think about what it may be. Remember that there are tools that will help you or help them at any time, and reach out for those things. And one little gesture can mean the difference to everyone. So, please think about those things. And again, thank you guys so much for allowing us to talk about this today.
Thank you.
Dr. Smith? Terry? Dr. Terry?
Just real quick, and then unfortunately I have to jump off to another call here. Thank you all for hosting this. It was a great conversation and a great time to come together and connect with folks. It really does start with us, folks, and it starts, I'll go back to our earlier analogies about resiliency, right? So we're demonstrating resiliency right now in what we're doing, right? We've given ourselves an opportunity and permission to talk about some things that have impacted us and impacted our lives. We've given ourselves permission to be vulnerable, and we've given ourselves some permission to reflect, and all of those things bode well. And as we move through the challenges that we have now, it really is a great opportunity for us all right now. It really is a great opportunity that we are at the precipice of some significant changes in our society and in our world. It is different today than it was just 3 months ago. We wouldn't be doing this, right? We would be in a room somewhere, right? This is we're in a very different world, and let's embrace it, and let's recognize the power of the resources that we have in our disposal. Willie mentioned it good, right? This thing broadcasts throughout the universe. This isn't just a conference room full of 45 folks talking, right? We are broadcasting throughout the universe with very powerful messages, and it can't help but resonate and come back to us. So let's keep up that good work. Gentlemen, my fellow panelists, thank you for your words of inspiration. I've taken good notes on what you shared with me as well. Will, as always, man, thank you for being the person that you are. I've got to sign off and click on this other meeting real quick. Got to give myself an over 50 break. Let me do that real quick.
Hello. Hello. Hey, we get that. Take care, brother, Dr. Phillip.
All right, well, take care.
Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Let me say one thing that I'll say to everybody as we close out. We talked about mental health. We've talked about physical health. We've about spiritual health. In the mental health capacity, one thing I do want, and I'm sure Patrick would know more about this, but I say to people how critically important it is to be open to getting counseling. Be open to getting counseling. And we got a generation, or we got a community of Black folks who don't like going to see somebody who can help them. And they'll say, oh no, I'm good. Let me tell you, when my brother died, and Will knew my mother died, and then my brother died shortly thereafter, I called my pastor and said, I need grief counseling. I called him and asked for it. I said, I need grief counseling, because I know, and I've told people over the years, if you break your hand, what do? You go to see a doctor, get it fixed. You go break your arm, what do? You go to see a doctor, get it fixed. But many of us will have broken hearts, and we'll try and heal it ourselves. Go get some help. Get some counseling. So I want to just say thank you for having me, Will. Thank you for the Prestige Community Resources. Please know that I'm available here in DC. Had a great time. Have had a great time being home, and we live in a great area. And so I'm grateful to be here. And I look forward to seeing y'all online. And when this is over, seeing you somewhere along the way, along the path, as we get through this. And we will get through this. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jolly.
For me, there are a couple of things I wanted to emphasize. I want to thank the panelists again. The two honorable community leaders that we had. Carl Racine, our Attorney General. Many of you may not know that he recently rolled out a Civil Rights Division as part of the DC office of the Attorney General. And to have a Civil Rights Division in the city is important, where our voice can be heard, and maybe we can start using, the system to work for us. And many of people in the community struggle with that, because they're hopeless, they're beaten, and it's important to provide the mechanisms where people can get, resources and get help. In terms of what the Office of the Attorney General does for consumers and tenants, if you've been scammed or overcharged for goods and services, if you face eviction, late fees on rent, utility shutoffs, you can contact the OAG's office. They provide support, especially in a COVID environment right now. The law is you cannot charge late fees or put a person out of their home during this pandemic. Workers in business, if your employer is denying you paid sick leave, you don't have to be a victim. All you have to do is call the OAG's office. You can call the Office of Wage and Labor. That's fixable. No use in being stressed out because somebody else chooses not to be the person you believe them to be. Seniors and vulnerable residents, especially our seniors. I talked to somebody yesterday about a 93-year-old couple, and they've been having people deliver groceries to them, but they're 93. And the wife can't, or the husband, they can't cook very well anymore. So instead of, dropping off groceries, maybe somebody can drop off meals. We have to look out for the vulnerable. We have to look out for our seniors. Treyon, and one of my clients taught me years ago that men respect men. Treyon's grandmother died during this whole COVID pandemic, and he's still there. He's still standing. He's still leading. He's still being a positive agent of change for this community. And we have to get behind our leaders. A lot of times we end up tearing them down, but the reality is, they represent our community, they represent us. And again, I just want to thank everybody for showing up, for participating, especially my panelists. Dr. Jolly, it's always a pleasure to see you. We grew up from the ground up, and a lot of us ain't here no more, and to see you have the impact. You've always been a role model. Willie has always been motivational, even when we were kids. He just had such an optimistic view. One thing you may not know about this guy, great trumpet player, always looked up to his musical abilities. And this is a guy that toured the world as a musician. And now he's focusing on carrying a message of hope, as all the other participants here. I'm gonna turn it back over to Seth, and I want to thank you guys for your participation.
And those are the words of Will Bonnet, the president of Prestige Community Resources. Will, we thank you very much for those insights. We also thank the founder of Prestige Community Resources, John Smith Jr. We want to also say thank you again to all of the voices on today's event, including DC Attorney General, Dr. Carl Racine, DC Council Member Treyon White. Our panelists here with us now, Dr. Willie Jolly, Patrick Coakley of Amerigroup, and Dr. Philip B. Terry Smith. And we also want to say a special thanks to our producers, Deanna Green, Swin Brock, and Karen McConnell Jones, who have assisted us in keeping us going today. And obviously for everyone who joined us today to view this and to hear this, we want to say a very special thanks to you. I certainly feel that our capacity for resiliency has increased as a result of all the great words that have come out of this conversation today. And I hope that we all have taken some good notes. I know I have, and that we go forth into our communities and begin to echo some of these great insights that we've received today. So once again, we say thank you for Prestige Community Resources, as well as Amerigroup, MMT Bank, Bread for the City, Food for the City, and also the DC Department of Behavioral Health. And to you, we say thank you once again, and we look forward to continuing the conversation at our next event.